good morning, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and wherever this special broadcast is being viewed and heard this morning. We greet you, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening in your part of the world. We're coming to you from the studios of VC3 Television in Kingstown, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, where we are here, as usual, to bring you a production of the Agency for Public Information, VC3 Television, and the National Broadcasting Corporation, for the official welcome of His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the President of the Republic of Cuba. Colvin, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure sharing the broadcast with you this morning as we go across the platforms, social media, television, and radio this morning. And we know we have listeners far and wide joining us thanks to the technology at our fingertips this morning. And the technology is what you'll see during the course of the morning as we focus on this important event, another state visit, this time by His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, the President of the Republic of Cuba. This is the first presidential visit by the Republic of Cuba, so it is a very special occasion and a visit by a very special friend of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And we're here to share with you as much of the action as possible. What will happen today is that the visit will take place over a series of days. And today we will have the official welcome at the Argyle International Airport. And the Argyle International Airport in itself is significant in terms of the visit that is happening today in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because in 2017 the Vice President then visited and we were opening the Argyle International Airport. And we'll tell you about that as we go through on the next couple of days in our broadcast. But we're happy to have you. We know Cubans are living in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, have made St. Vincent and the Grenadines their home. Some of them are working at the diagnostic, modern medical diagnostic center, and other places, medical doctors, nurses, and serving various spares. And we will, over the next couple of days, try to put all of that into context and the symbolism of this historic visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. What you're seeing on your screen is some aerial shots which we took earlier this morning, shortly about after 8 or so this morning, just to show you the sun-kissed hills of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. A beautiful morning here in capital Kingstown, from which our broadcast is coming to you. And we see the shots, I believe that's Edinburgh Point, that we're seeing there in the shot, the headland that projects out into the sea. We observe the Kingstown Cemetery there and the Victoria Park from which we are. Today's broadcast is being streamed. But Colvin, your thoughts as we get ready to show what's happening at the AIA?
Well, it promises to be a great day weather-wise, that's for sure. I had a glance at the forecast earlier, and the threat of rain is not very high today, and this would allow for a smooth transition between events, hopefully, and an experience of, the warmth of St. Vincent and the Grenadines in its truest sense. We've been having quite a lot of rain in the past few weeks, and in the past few days we've had better weather. And today, hopefully one of those days where the visiting delegation can have a free movement, between the different engagements during the course of the day today and over the coming days. But a view of Kingstown this morning, we mentioned the lovely sun-kissed hills and the very calm seas this morning, and it will make for a pleasant journey down to the Grenadines for those who are journeying to the Grenadines today. But we expect a smooth flow of things as the President arrives this morning and continuing during the course of the day today, his engagements, which was planned until Monday. So all in all, great expectations as we welcome another great friend of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to our shores.
Well, most persons, as it relates to Cuba, would know and be familiar with the then president, who's now deceased, the former president Fidel Castro.
Yes.
And Fidel Castro, his term of office from the 2nd of December 1926 to the 24th of February of 2000. President Castro, who was a dear friend of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, passed in 2016.
Yes.
And from there, we then had the transition to Raul Castro. And from the 31st of July to 2006, I think, to about the 24th of the 2nd of 2008, when he was the acting president of the Council of State. And then from the 24th of February 2008 to the 19th of April 2018, which brings us to this particular point in the history of that country, which the 19th of April 2018 to the present, and we now have the president of Cuba, who's now making an official visit in this capacity, in the very first capacity, to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We welcome our viewers, we welcome our listeners.
Yes.
Former Ambassador Dexter Rose, we're happy that you joined us on the broadcast, and we're happy that you're here. And
important day and a very momentous occasion.
Very, very impressive. And to celebrate the occasion, I thought of speaking a bit of Spanish, but I don't want to tempt.
I wouldn't attempt that today.
You won't?
No.
Yeah, I'll do that a little bit later on.
Other few members of our team might be able to tackle that quite fluently.
Yes.
But this morning we are looking at live shots from the Argyle International Airport as we speak to you for the benefit of those who are listening by way of radio. Of course, we welcome you locally, regionally, internationally. Prime Minister the Honorable Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, along with the Speaker of the House of Assembly on the local end, engaging with some of the members of the delegation, I believe arrived in advance of His Excellency the President. And there's been some ongoing conversations, and in the back I can observe other members of Parliament, including the Honorable Finance Minister and the Venezuelan ambassadors also are there, and a few other of the diplomatic corps. And as we go through this morning, we'll see other members of the diplomatic corps appearing in our shots as we zoom in on the main feature for today. At the Argyle International Airport, the welcoming of His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, President of the Republic of Cuba, to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You mentioned earlier the former President Fidel Castro, and it's interesting to note that the Independence Day in Cuba is observed on January 1st. That's a very good date to start your independence, the first day of the year. And this is actually the anniversary of the revolution led by Fidel Castro on that day, January 1st. And it has been since observed as Independence Day in that country. A beautiful country, quite similar to ours in terms of the weather, maybe a bit cooler at night due to its proximity to the North America. But I know that there are very many similarities from what I've seen and what I've read about the beautiful country and the people of Cuba as well.
Well, the history of Cuba is very interesting. It's a very thought out and very well planned society. And when you're going through some of the notes that we have here that we will share with you throughout the course of the broadcast, you would realize that the economy, of course, of Cuba is dominated by state-run enterprises. I think there is a percentage of 95 as opposed to 5%, which is operated by the private sector, in this case mainly composed of self-employment and cooperatives, and that's just 5% as compared to 95% as the economy is dominated by state-run enterprises. You would also appreciate that most of the industries are owned by the government and operated by the government as well, and most of the labor force is employed by the government of Cuba as well. With a population, I believe, of 11.32 million. You look at that and you compare that to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which is I think the 2021 census puts us at 111,000, just thereabouts.
Yes.
So you look at the vast comparison between both countries, and you realize, even though, notwithstanding that we're still able to maintain excellent relations between both countries.
Yes, and when you really put the numbers side by side, you see the great 11 point some million compared to 111,000 people. But we've been able to foster that great relation since May of 1992, when we began diplomatic relations, strengthened that with some technical arrangements in 1997, and further strengthened in 2001 with additional technical arrangements, and of course the facilitation of scholarships and many more students from St. Vincent and the Grenadines going to Cuba, making Cuban connections. Some today still residing in Cuba, because we didn't mention that, but there are many Vincentians who went to Cuba and remained there. They had a family, etc. there, and there's this Cuba Vincentian connection now, and we now know that as a friend they've assisted us in many different areas, particularly in the field of health over the years, and that relationship between us and Cuba has been quite fruitful.
Well, just recently, you want to take into context and we're not yet out of the pandemic, that is the COVID-19 pandemic, but you remember not too long ago, Cuba provided assistance in terms of making vaccines available to us here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines during the pandemic. And that, of course, is one of the most recent ones that comes to mind. And there's a lot more that we can make reference to. And like I said, we have 3 days of broadcast, so we'll go through that over the next couple days. But to focus on really what is happening this morning, the delegation is expected, the Cuban president and his delegation is expected here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to make an official visit here. Several activities will be held throughout the course of the days that they're here in St. Vincent, from the 3rd to the 5th. We expect this morning upon arrival that he will meet with the officials, including the Speaker of the OECS House of Assembly, but to take it from the top down.
From the top.
For
Okay.
Her Excellency, the Governor General, Dame Susan Duggan, and we
It's already
saw
there.
just a short while ago her husband, Hugh Duggan, as well.
Yes.
Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Ralphie Gonsalves and his wife, Mrs. Eloise Gonsalves. Then we will have the Speaker of the House of Assembly, Senator the Honorable Rochelle Ford, and we will also have the Speaker of the OECS House of Assembly, the Honorable Rennie Batiste, who we just saw in our shot a while ago. So there's some milling about taking place at the airport. The advanced delegation from Cuba, which included the press, and are conducting some interviews on the ground with key officials here in St. Vincent
I think it's with
and
the
the
Cuban media at
Grenadines.
the
Yes,
moment.
those are taking place with the Cuban media. But our media is also on the ground, and it is because of our media that we're
We can
able to
see.
share these shots with you. So we greet, and of course our team that's on the ground, you won't see them, they're working behind the scenes today, but of course this is an excellent production which we hope to bring to you throughout the course of this morning as we await the official landing of the aircraft with the Cuban president and his wife and the other members of the delegation who will be traveling on that flight.
Right, and it's a packed agenda over the next coming days, and it will see His Excellency engaging in a wide cross-section of discussions, meetings, and from those, I'm sure, quite fruitful discussions as to the way forward between the relations of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and that of the Republic of Cuba. And we do know that the Honorable Prime Minister has maintained the deep connection with Cuba and how dear Cuba is to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we can see now on our screens, for the benefit of the radio audience, the Honorable Prime Minister continues in his conversation with members from the Cuban delegation. Appears, as usual, just sharing a bit of a humor and engaging those who came on the advance flight into St. Vincent and the Grenadines as part of this official visit. But we await the arrival of His Excellency and his delegation, which we believe will be here soon. And by all means, we hope that you will stay with us during the course of this broadcast and over the coming days as we bring you all of the events live on this platform, whichever one you're looking or listening on. We will be able to bring that to you here for your convenience. And we can assure you as well that we'll make sure that for those areas that we're not live, that we have some photographic highlights wherever that's permitted, and we will share those to you or with you as well.
In going through the notes, Calvin, I observed that Cuba has the largest diplomatic representation of any Latin American country, with 177 embassies and
Wow.
3 consulates worldwide. Just let that sinking for a bit, and you see the importance of that in terms of the expansive coverage and the representation in these countries where they have embassies. And that's very significant, if I must comment. And you tie that into the active role that they play in relations with the developing world, and serving for host for the Non-Aligned Movement Summit back in September of 2006, and moving on to take over the chairmanship, I think from Malaysia, I believe. Right, from Malaysia. And Cuba, I'm reading here, Cuba is also a member of the organizations such as the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America's ALBA, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC, the Association of Caribbean States, the ACS, the Alliance of Small Islands Developing States, G77, the African, Caribbean and Pacific Group of States, and more.
Yes, and interesting that we note, and those who hear regularly about Cuba may know about the rolled tobacco. You know, that's one of the prominent products out of Cuba. But beyond that, there's sugar, their medical products, there's nickel, shellfish, citrus, coffee, petroleum, just some of the products that they export. And their biggest export market is actually Venezuela at 17.4%. And they continue to maintain a very strong exchange point with Venezuela and with Spain. Just over 12% of their exports go to Spain as well. On the reverse end, the import comes mainly from Spain and China, and those involved in their manufacturing and, of course, for the function of the country, etc. And the Cuban peso is actually pegged to the US dollar. So one Cuban peso is equal to $1 US, which makes things easier for trade, having the fact that it's just flat. There's no point difference in the exchange. Quite a number of imports in terms of petroleum products and foods, etc. But of course, every country has their imports just as well as they have their exports.
Well, I just got word that the plane should be landing in about 4 minutes. I think since I got the 4 minutes reminder that it's probably down now to 3. And yes, probably. So we will share that with you once we have that on screen. We will definitely share that to you.
We have several
share
cameras
that
on the
with
ground
you.
out there.
Yes, we do have several cameras on the ground, and we should be able to share with you some segments of the tour once it leaves the Argyle International Airport and heads to its next destination altogether. So we expect this morning that once the aircraft arrives, that it will be met on arrival by the senior protocol officer, the chief protocol officer, who is the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we expect that will happen this morning, and I believe as well there will be presentations of bouquets, and we will then see the presentation of the various delegations from the Cuban side to the Vincentian side, where the officials will be formally introduced. I believe that given the overall the way things are in terms of meetings and so forth, there have been previous meetings, but you do that formally you do that differently now in a formal context. There will be lots of photographs. The students from the various schools, I believe, and the organizations such as the Girl Guides and even the Boy Scouts. I'm not sure if they call them Boy Scouts anymore, but
just
the Scouts, right, would be on the outside of the airport. where they will, of course, get an opportunity to meet with the president and to see the other members of the delegation. I believe as well that there will be some form of entertainment. Perhaps there's
Maybe
a pan
pan.
side there who will be playing probably some Spanish tunes as well.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so Spanish Harlem or probably something like that,
Probably.
or something like that. So
But we know there's always
once
some good
once we have sight of all of that,
Yes.
we will share that with you. And you alluded to it earlier on that in the absence of live broadcasts, we'll ensure that we have pictures covering that, so we'll make them available as well.
Machineries are in place for that.
Right, and we just see that the small contingent of officers from the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force have taken their guard, and the officials are now going to ensure that they are in proper placement in terms of the line. So the parade, I think it's dressing.
Yes, they're doing the dressing
right.
now.
They're doing the dressing part of the parade, and the president, I believe, accompanied either by Her Excellency, the Governor General Dame Susan Duggan, will be escorting the president to inspect the guard of honor here at the Argyle International Airport. We've just seen the arrival of Miss SVG 2022, Miss
Newly crowned.
Jada Ross, newly crowned indeed.
We can say newly crowned because it was much later in the year this time around. Just weeks ago, as a matter of fact, that we had a new Miss SVG 2022, Jada Ross. And I see she has a lovely bouquet, which she'll be presenting to someone on that arriving aircraft this morning. We see the members of Parliament and a shot of the arriving aircraft, maybe one or two. Of course, we will get the visuals and let you know as the circumstances require. But we welcome you again. If you're looking at live visuals with us, you're listening by way of NBC Radio or the other stations joining in on the broadcast this morning, we welcome you as well. Those who are online via the various pages of NBC, VC3, and the Agency for Public Information, Channel 114, we say welcome to you as well. And we do hope that you are taking in the broadcast and enjoying the broadcast this morning.
Let's just, for a bit, appreciate the beauty of what we're seeing on the tarmac at the Argyle International Airport as the plane, I believe it's making its way to taxiing its way to the red carpet. We saw earlier on when we were in the preparatory stages of our broadcast this morning that the red carpet was being laid. So the Argyle International Airport is officially closed at this time to accommodate what is taken place, which is the arrival, and he has arrived, all things being well, that the President of the Republic of Cuba is on this flight, and we will see that very shortly. I recognize police officer, superintendent of police, I believe that is Claston Francis, I believe.
Yes, Claston Francis.
Yes. And not by any means a very large contingent of police officers, as you would appreciate that this is just a small contingent. Given what is happening. It's not going to be any length of time that we would spend at the Argyle International Airport this morning. So shorter contingents would be required as opposed to the large contingents which you would see at national parades, commissioners' parades, or the independence parades, or other state and official functions altogether. The Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force Band, headed by Inspector Miller, nicely clad and always looking smartly attired.
Yes, very busy this time of year
yes,
for
a
them.
very
Very,
time
very
of
busy
year.
time.
Doing all of this in collaboration with the police concerts that they go to the various communities across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and those in itself are very much look forward to. And we're using this morning bed music for our broadcast, an excellent production, sweet music I call it,
Yes,
from our
always
very
sweet
own
music.
cultural ambassador, Darren Andrews, who has become a staple in terms of providing bed music for us in our broadcast. And thank you so much, Ambassador Darren Andrews. We thank you and always appreciate you giving us permission to do that. So the plane is making its final approach to the red carpet. We see the saluting days, and all of that will come into focus once the Governor General and the President of Cuba will of course be positioned on the saluting days. So let's see what happens.
And we hope that you're able to stay with us as we have our live feeds coming to us here at studios of EC3 Television from the Argyle International Airport. And in a few moments, we expect to have the President, His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, as we see him disembarking at this time and touching the soil of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we welcome him, the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, on this occasion, his first visit as president. And the
Bienvenida al Presidente y Esposa de Cuba.
I see you were saving that one for this.
San Vicente. Oh my. So we welcome the president, and you see the hugs of our camaraderie the embraces and
evident.
Yeah, we call them embrazios, so we
being greeted by Miss SPG 2022, Jada Ross, and other members of our foreign ministry in the process as well. Moving forward with Her Excellency the Governor General, his first walk on Vincentian soil, making his way to
saluting
days.
Yes.
And as customary on an occasion as this, all respect is due, and the military gathering at the airport will now do their routine. Not sure if you're able to hear the sound from that location at this point.
National anthem of the Republic of Cuba.
No.
National anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We've just heard the national anthem of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Before that, you heard the national anthem of the Republic of Cuba.
Yes.
So shortly, at this point, we expect it. Well, we have the presentation of the parade,
Yes.
and then the inspection of the guard of honor.
And for this, he will be accompanied by the guard commander this morning. The beautiful songs of the Royal St. Vincent and the Grenadines Police Force Band doing their due as per usual in excellent form. And as he takes his quick trek around the red carpet and the inspection of the guard, moves quickly forward to the front row, and following this, he head back to the saluting base momentarily. And the band playing the song One Canamera.
Yeah.
That's the name of the song. And he will now receive his final salute there, and I believe he's leaving the saluting base now. On to the next item as per planned here today. Quite a swift movement of things, Leon. The inspection was done in record timing, quick movement along the red carpet, and I believe he'll now proceed to greet the members of those gathered at the Argyle International Airport this morning.
And you will recognize as well that there are interpreters who would be providing
Yes.
that in the line there, just meeting with the Minister of Finance, and now the Minister of Tourism, the Honourable Carlos James, the Minister of National Mobilization, and the Minister of Education, Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Affairs, and this is happening very quickly.
Very quickly.
The Attorney General is, and we see Senator Roshad Bala, the Honourable Sinclair Leacock, the Speaker of the OECS House of Assembly, the Honourable Rennie Batiste. Then we have the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Mrs. Anne G. Jackson Williams, and the others, I believe, are members of the Cuban delegation who came as part of the advance party. 2 flights landed earlier on this morning, and the officials are also in the line, and the formal arrangements and introductions are being made
In a very quick manner.
Yes, very much so. And as we see, the wife of the Cuban president is also meeting the officials as part of the presentation party.
And shortly we'll see them disappearing on the inside of the airport and take the rest of the proceedings, some of which we may not be able to show you, but we'll try as much as possible to see how much of it we can bring to you during the course of this particular part of the welcome, which, by the way, is moving very quickly, as you would note from the very moment His Excellency got off the plane. We've moved along quite quickly to the next part of what is expected this morning, and we see the members of the local and visiting media, the Cuban media, also with a strong presence on this occasion this morning. And we will try to keep the visuals going during the course of the movement, of course, very quickly through the Argyle International Airport. And as we see the movement to the upper floor of the terminal building,
Well, they will be going to the VVIP lounge
Yes,
at the Argyle International Airport, and I believe they'll have some meetings
yes,
and then conduct a tour.
there's a photo op that will take place shortly, and we may just see some highlights of it as the photographers get their shots. There's a particular area where photos are expected to be taken by those who are part of that process, and as expected, the members of the Cuban media from time to time will take up our entire view, as of course there's a very strong presence there this morning from Cuban media, and covering the visit of the president to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, having been the first time that we're having a visit by a Cuban president in office.
There is also the tour, which is expected to be conducted officially at the Argyle International Airport this morning, will be conducted by a Jamaican, Mr. Dale Davis, who is actually the new chief executive officer of airports at the Argyle International Airport. Very well rounded individual, had an opportunity to a meeting and comes from a very rich history in terms of his work at airports across the region and internationally. And so we're expected to have a tour of the airport, as we alluded to earlier on in 2017, when the Argyle International Airport was officially opened. The government of Cuba was represented at the time by the Vice President of the Republic of Cuba.
Right. And as we continue to bring in our coverage, I remind you that in just a few minutes we'll be wrapping up this particular event, because there are other events that will take place that we of course will provide you with photos of those events on our several platforms. We'll continue to bring in the various updates for those that we're not able to do the lives for, and a number of events are happening during the course of the next few days, some of which you may see live on your screens or listen to them on the radio, and others you may have snippets or photographs shared of those. And we welcome the President of the Republic of Cuba, His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, and some more shots now from the Argyle International Airport. Of course, some areas we're limited in terms of our where we can go. Of course, there are very secure areas which will not be permitted, our cameras wouldn't be permitted there, but we'll take you to wherever we can in the course of this particular process of the tour of the airport, and we will make sure that we give you the best possible in terms of the visuals from those locations.
Of course, there is a rich history of our airports here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and recently that was captured quite nicely by the St. Vincent and the Grenadines National Trust and Perez Distribution Limited, in terms of the mural at the site of the old airport, which was the site of the old airport. And there's a very rich history of that in terms of how all of that got started here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in terms of the journey in aviation, civil aviation, on Friday, July 29th. Dates back to 1932, when the first flight landed on a pasture in Diamond.
And now you know why we still use SVD, right?
Right.
That's because it's St. Vincent Diamond.
Right.
And I recently we had a program about a year or so ago,
yes,
and that was shared, and there were persons who really didn't know that. So why are we still using SVD? But that's the reason. That's the airport code that was initiated many years ago, St. Vincent Diamond. And as much as we've now moved from the Annisville E.T. Joshua Airport to the Argyle International Airport, the airport codes themselves in terms of internal operations have changed, but our country identifier, SVD, still remains the same.
Yes. I could remember in all of that process speaking at the time with the officials from ECA and the other civil aviation authorities across the region, when we, just before the transition from what was the then E.T. Joshua Airport at Annisville now to the Argyle International Airport, and being involved in all of the broadcasts in terms of the final Liat flight from E.T. Joshua to arriving at the Argyle International Airport, and the 2 days of ceremonies which happened after, and how grand an occasion that was, and also to the delight when you realize that the friendly governments, as they were termed, who contributed towards the building of the Argyle International Airport, when they arrived, I could remember hearing that there was the arrival of someone from Cuba, and then there was a huge there was a huge applause at Argyle there when all of that took place. 2 days that I will never forget. Never forget at all, in terms of the history of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the importance of airports and having an international airport here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The relationship between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and Cuba dates back to, is it 1992? And Cuba, it's significant. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is continues to be a champion for Cuba, continues to be a champion for Venezuela. And the significance of, even so, the relationship between Cuba and the CARICOM. Some of the multilateral projects and some of the local projects, which we, depending on how much time we have, we'll be able to share some of that with you as part of the broadcast. But a very rich history, very rich legacy. And if our guys can just give us a shot of what is happening at the airport, so we can see where the team is and what's happening, so we can share that with you, before we look a bit at probably the Cuban foreign policy and how that positions itself with, or into, I should say, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yes.
And with, sorry, you were going to...
I was actually adding to the CARICOM-Cuba relations, and that the fact that that's been over 30 years, since 1972 actually, that we've had Cuban relations with the CARICOM as a whole, and the states have all come together in that, forward movement of the region, working along with the Republic of Cuba under successive presidents, in making sure that the interests of both are taken care of. Trade, assistance in health primarily. Cuba not just provided assistance in health to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but many of our CARICOM brothers and sisters have also benefited from the assistance of Cuba in the area of health. And
Cuba assisted CARICOM tremendously during the COVID-19 pandemic. There was a scarcity of nurses across CARICOM, and I remember countries were looking to Cuba to assist in the early days of the pandemic. And so when things got a little bit grave across this part of the region, that the health experts in Cuba were the ones who provided some guidance to CARICOM and to individual countries in CARICOM who reached out to Cuba for some support during that time. As it relates to the relations now with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you see that there have always been a thrust to deepen the relations and cooperation in the spirit of development, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. And in 1997, I believe you alluded to this, both states entered into a more formal and a technical cooperation agreement, which provided the framework for enhancing cooperation even more so between both countries. In 2001, with the change in the political landscape, that's when this current administration, the ULP administration, took up government here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There was a renewed vigor to intensify the cooperation and solidify the cooperation which even existed between both countries, and technical assistance have come in the form of scholarship. I believe the first set of scholarships were offered to 5. I believe it's 5 Vincentians. I remember the names, but some are escaping me, so I don't want to call name lest I offend anyone. But I remember some names, right? The very first 5. And then you had 8 programs which were augmented, the permission for a wider range of Vincentians to pursue studies in Cuba, as well as creating a base for Cubans to enter St. Vincent and the Grenadines to impart their expertise in various fields. And we mentioned healthcare. Many of them came during the building of the airport. I think it was Perez. Was it Perez? You know, the so you can talk about that, and there has been a very rich history collaboration between both countries in the area of culture as well. Persons going off to study physiotherapy. The name Dinis Bayam comes to mind, and other medical doctors. So many of them. So many of our medical doctors have been trained in Cuba and continue to be trained in Cuba. Many of our engineers too receive their formal training in Cuba. Our own Raisa Bruce Lai was trained in documentary, a documentary specialist, received formal training in Cuba as well. So those are some of the things we want to share with you. In 2005, in its effort to further enhance the existing fruitful relations, the government of St. Vincent accredited His Excellency Ambassador Dexter Rose as its first ambassador to the Republic of Cuba. And I know Dexter Rose is viewing and listening to the broadcast, so we definitely want to say hello. And presently we're being served by His Excellency Ellsworth John, who is now the Ambassador of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to Cuba.
Yes, and quite a very productive relationship we've had. We're now getting visuals once more from the Argyle International Airport. We have the students, as we mentioned earlier, the Girl Guides and the Scouts. They're very evident there this morning. Cadet Force members, they're also part of that group of students. The Seventh-day Adventist Pathfinders are also represented there this morning. The Marine unit of the Cadet Force, they are represented. And the pan players, you see them, they're in the back there, so we know for sure we're getting some lovely pan music as the President comes through that area, and I believe he'll do so shortly following the tour that is taking place inside at the moment.
Not to cut you off, but just to make a clarification, His Excellency Ambassador Dexter Rose was the first resident ambassador. So resident must be added to the equation, not just an ambassador. Yes. He was the first resident ambassador, having been appointed in 2005. So Ambassador Kingsley Lane was first, followed by Ambassador Ellsworth John, but both non-resident. Thank you very much, Ambassador Rose, for providing that information and for sharing that with us.
Okay, so while we of course bring in the visuals, we have two locations at the Argyle International Airport sharing the visuals. There's a setup on the inside. Inside of the airport, of course, there's whatever is happening there is a private setup, and of course the students and the uniformed organizations who are waiting outside.
They're on the land side.
Yes,
that's
they're
why
on the land side. Yes. Right. So the airside activities in the terminal, and then the land side just outside of the terminal building itself. And of course, we hope that you'll be able to stay with us for all of those. Yes, we see the visuals now of the airside, where the meetings and the tours are happening at the moment, and we will bring you the video. Yeah, there we go, the visual from the outside, and not sure if we could get the audio of the pan music. Yes, let's take in some of that.
Still there?
So we welcome you back to our broadcast from studios at Kingstown, VC3 in Kingstown. Almost said Richmond Hill in Kingstown. But of course, it is a joint production of the Agency for Public Information, the National Broadcasting Corporation, and VC3 Television, emanating from the studios of VC3 Television. We're bringing you live coverage this morning of the official visit by the President of Cuba and his wife and delegation to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Shortly after 11 this morning, the President and his wife and the other members of his delegation landed at the Argyle International Airport in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we had the playing of the national anthems of the Republic of Cuba, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the inspection of the guard. And what has taken place now is a private meeting at the VVIP lounge at the Argyle International Airport. The pictures that we're seeing now are from the Interpretation Center at the Argyle International Airport, and that traces the history of how the Argyle International Airport came into being. And that's a very rich history and legacy that is depicted within that interpretation room.
And there's a photo there with the various leaders who are a big part of the construction, inclusive of one of former President Fidel Castro.
Yes. Right. So the Argyle International Airport was constructed, the construction of the Argyle International Airport was completed in 2017 in response to a growing demand for airlift out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as the E.T. Joshua Airport could not accommodate the demand for flights into and out of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is dubbed as one of this country's most important infrastructure assets, and its first truly international airport, and it was built to accommodate 1.2 million passengers annually, 4 times the capacity of what existed at the Arnesville Airport.
E.T. Joshua Airport, yes. And we continue to see the visuals for those listening on the radio end, visuals from the Interpretation Center, the Argyle International Airport. Our team scattered throughout the airport to bring us these images, all live and into our studios here at VC3 in Kingstown. And we expect momentarily to see the President and his delegation move to the front of the airport, the land side of the airport, to greet the students and the other uniformed organizations who are there this morning to greet him and his delegation before moving to the next item on the agenda. Quite a packed program spread across 3 days, and the highlight, of course, being his arrival here this morning. This is the first of several important events. There'll be another event tomorrow, a quite important engagement at the Modern Medical Complex, and of course we'll bring that to you as well once the possibility exists for us to do so technically. And for all the other events, we ask that you stay glued to our platforms, to the social media pages, to the television, radio, and we will provide you with continuous updates as the information comes to us during the course of this visit.
The visiting president and his delegation still are at the Argyle International Airport, where a meeting has taken place. And earlier on, we mentioned how the airport came into being. That is the Argyle International Airport, and this was financed through concessionary rates, funded through grants at concessionary rates, and the coalition of the willing was alluded to when we speak of Cuba, Venezuela, Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico, Austria, Malaysia, Turkey, Qatar, Libya and Taiwan. And this was formalized into an arrangement called the Coalition of the Willing, and it was constructed under the direction of the International Airport Development Company Limited, the IADC, a private limited liability company owned by the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, at a final cost of approximately EC $700 million. And the airport has been opened, and so the airlines which generally service the airport now are Liat, Inter-Caribbean Airlines. We have Conviasa Caribbean Airlines, Air Canada, American Airlines, Virgin Atlantic, Grenadine Airways, SVT Air, Mustique Airways. Cargo airlines include Amerijet International, DHL, and FedEx. And you know how important Amerijet is at this time of year.
And outside of the assistance in terms of the airport, we mentioned briefly the scholarships as well, and over 100 Vincentians have been able to benefit from that across the 14 provinces of Cuba, and there's still about just over a dozen or so, dozens actually, still completing their studies who have gone more recently to Cuba. So well over 100 scholarship in the time frame that they've offered those to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we think of the contributions to health, the Vision Now program, that one comes to mind right away when you think of the involvement of Cuba, otherwise known as Operation Miracle. And that involved many Vincentians who previously found it difficult to purchase glasses, and you know those can be quite expensive. With the assistance of the Cuban government, thousands of Vincentians had their eyes checked and diagnosed, and those who required glasses were able to benefit from that program, and many of them have been able to continue to benefit from that over the years. Some, I believe, even going to Cuba to have corrective surgeries being done, those that couldn't be done here. And we know that that program continues to benefit Vincentians. Some of them are now senior citizens, as that program started well over 10 years ago. And they continue to see the benefits of having that intervention at that stage in their life. Outside of that, the mission to deal with genetics of persons with disabilities, that has been one. We didn't hear quite a lot about that, but that happened more behind the scenes. And the training and preferential associations with groundbreaking diabetic foot ulcer care drug, Herbaport P, remember that? The Herbaport P medication, and that was, from what I understand, life-changing for many.
Yes.
Something that was only available in Cuba, was developed in Cuba exclusively, and we had the benefit of having access to that on a preferential basis. And I would believe that many Vincentians continue to benefit from the availability of Herbaport P to them in our medical system.
You remember, I think I can vividly remember the changing out of light bulbs. Was that Cuba or Venezuela?
I believe that was Venezuela. Subject to correction, but I believe that was Venezuela. Yes, that I believe was Venezuela at the time.
Right. So I have a bit of a trivia for you, Calvin. Right? Let me see if you have access to that. So I have a bit of a trivia for you. Which was the first commercial international?
Sorry, just let me correct. Let me make my correction. Yes, so the Cubans who have actually contributed with the energy-saving bulbs.
Right.
So I'm correcting myself.
And I'm just seeing Mr. Rose saying it was Cuba, right, with the bulbs. So I remember that. I remember that quite vividly. I don't think I was on island when that was happening, though, but I remember it because it was so significant of them traveling to the various communities and homes and ensuring that the bulb would change out, giving us more in terms of energy conservation and energy efficient bulbs. And that was a very instructive project, very instructive.
And at that time, most Vincentians didn't really see the significance.
No.
It's a bulb, it's a bulb.
Yeah.
But if you compare 100 watts to 10 watts, and you translate that to units on electricity, you know, it is a huge difference.
But it is significant now how we pay attention to that in our societies. Now you hear people asking for LED, you know, all those sort of things, energy-saving bulbs, using solar at every possible time, every possible instance they get to use that, and we're better for it. So my trivia: first commercial international flight to land at AIA, and it's not because I have that page open. I not because I have that page open. You remember that one?
No, I don't.
I
wouldn't.
remember that.
I wouldn't guess it.
I remember those 2 days. I remember that because oh my, 2 days. You're trying to look for it, right? So it was it was Dynamic Airways, and it came. It came from New York City on the morning of February 14th.
Dynamic Airways. Now I remember.
Yes,
the name.
2017, and there's an approximation of about 7 minutes after 7. I remember that,
Wow.
because we had just the night before, we were at the airport very late, and then, so what I tried to do is, those of us who are at the airport late, I tried to give a break, and so another team would go there. But there was so much excitement. There was so much excitement.
At that time you were at another agency.
Yes, I was at, it was, it's another agency and doing other things. But I remember that. I remember that quite vividly. And then later, Easy Skies came. And then Sunwing Airlines,
that
was a lovely day, a lovely day here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and just taking you back to that with that nice little trivia.
You see some movements now.
Yes.
I believe the Cuban media is moving into place. We just saw a few of them pass by our location there, and once you see some movements by the media, there's something about to happen more than likely, and the anticipation is that soon we'll see His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel and his wife and the remainder of the delegation move through the airport and outside to greet the students and the uniformed organizations who are gathered there. And bright and sunny morning, as far as we're aware. It's good weather on the outside, and relatively warm, hopefully not too warm, but I'm sure His Excellency is quite comfortable and quite used to that weather condition, as Cuba has quite similar in terms of weather patterns there. But we hope that you're enjoying the coverage, and those particularly following online, those who are viewing, we know that you're taking in all of the visuals as well. Those on radio might enjoy more of the visuals, because there's lots to see that we may not describe for you, and that's not possible for us to describe for you. And we hope that you are sharing it. If you're watching it, yes, feel free to share it across to your page, and let others know that we are covering this event live for you wherever you are around the world.
And speaking of airports, Colvin, I could remember, I'm not sure if it was last year or the year before, but I remember this time of year, especially coming closer towards the end of the year,
Christmas,
that several private jets are at the apron at the Agel International Airport, simply because, of course, lots of people visit St. Vincent, especially the Grenadines, have transitioned from the old year to the new year, and I certainly look forward to that.
And it's warmer here.
Yes, the apron can accommodate up to 40 airplanes at any given time. And I remember, you remember seeing that that visual of all those private jets packed at the airport there. And we continue to show you the shots. Nothing much is happening at the moment, but yes, making sure that everything is definitely happening. And so we continue to be here with you. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the natural place to be at this time of the year, at any time of the year. Several cruise ships have been in the harbor of the last couple of days. There was one yesterday, not too sure the name, can't remember the name offhand, but there's
one that left late yesterday. It was beautiful to look at as it left.
A
multitude of colors and the different levels. It was really an awesome sight as it left Port Kingstown last night and sailed away from our shores. And it tends to be a beautiful sight when they're coming and you see these huge ships on the horizon, and as they get closer you realize, oh, that's a massive ship. And when they leave us, sometimes at nights you get to see the beauty of the lighting, the well lit.
Aida, I'm told Aida is a German vessel, and so that's Aida, that's a German vessel. So we see our guys giving us some shots
Remember
there
the
as well.
chandelier?
Yes, at the
custom
at
made.
the yes. Yes.
And a signature piece, centerpiece of the Argyle International Airport. It's just one of several pieces. If you have a look, there you go. So there's a wider shot. It's one of several pieces making up that display.
Right. And I could remember getting from the Prime Minister when we did some interviews earlier on the use of the colors. The special emphasis on the selection of the colors which were used and why certain colors were used, reflecting the green, reflecting the greenery and the tranquility of the people and all of that. Jefferson Glasgow says that I think, please forgive me, Jefferson, I believe it's a male name, says that he was on the Caribbean Airlines from New York on its inaugural flight. So there you go. Thank you very much, Jefferson. Looking on and viewing from Tampa. And earlier on, Karen George Nero answered the trivia correctly, saying Dynamic Airways.
As we await the delegation to come into our visuals, we do know that they're nearby, and that's certain now as we see the advanced team coming from upstairs and moving to the next point. Just some rearranging of the what is happening there, but of course we will keep you posted once we're aware of the next movements. Hopefully the next direction will be on the outside, where the students and the other uniform groups have been waiting for some time to greet His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel and his wife and the delegation, who will be in St. Vincent and the Grenadines enjoying the foods, the culture, the warmth of the people, everything about St. Vincent and the Grenadines over the next 3 days. He will leave the state on Monday after other engagements that will span those 3 days. So looks like quite an interesting trip for him, getting in the full Vincentian experience along the way.
And you would definitely get that in 3 days.
Yes.
Yes, at least snippets of it.
Yes.
Yeah, and also happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines over this weekend is the launch of 9 Mornings, and that's taking place tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
You might just hear from me for that tomorrow. So that is another part. And the turning off the lights at Heritage Square, we've been promised that it will be quite a spectacle. Not sure if His Excellency will have the opportunity to see that, but it will be quite a spectacle when the lights go on at Heritage Square, we're told by Bomani, who was in charge of the 9 Mornings Committee, and a packed program planned to kick off our 9 Mornings Festival, a unique Vincentian tradition. If it's one thing that we can brag about as 9 Mornings, it's something that you can find nowhere else. There were attempts to copy it in other places around the world, but nothing like a Vincentian 9 Mornings Festival, and that is inclusive of the weather. A very cool breeze that you get on a morning in December that just adds to the overall experience, not just the cultural showcases and the singing and the dancing and all of that, but the very environment, the very climate that you're in that time frame, that adds to the experience that you can't really replicate.
And the activities are no longer just concentrated in Kingstown, but we're going to go and pay attention now to the wall at the Argyle International Airport, where the photos are there of the leaders of the Coalition of the Willing, who we mentioned earlier on, and we see that of Fidel Castro, deceased. Also Patrick Manning of Trinidad and Tobago, who's also deceased, and Hugo Chavez
of Venezuela.
Hugo Chavez of Venezuela there as well, and we welcome the President once more and his delegation to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the natural place to be. The only place you want to be, where you have the most beautiful sunrise and the most awesome sunsets. And we have quite a few Vincentians who are living in the diaspora who are wishing that they were in St. Vincent, missing their homeland, and we're definitely bringing your homeland to you wherever you are, and we welcome you as part of our broadcast, and we say that we're happy to bring to you the transmission of this special broadcast from the studios at VC3 in capital Kingstown, the central business district of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We see the wife of the Prime Minister, Mrs. Eloise Gonzalez, there as well, and the wife of the Cuban president, and the other officials.
Photo moment
yes, I could imagine how
look at
much
the flashes.
of,
There's
yes,
so many,
that's, yes.
There's so many photos being taken at this time, and for those who are, have particular issues with a lot of flash photography, we warn you that there will be quite a lot of that at this time, as the photographers, both local, international, local, regional, international, because there are some international media, members of the media present and capturing the events here today. Of course, we're reporting to the external overseas media as to what is transpiring here. The first visit of a Cuban president to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The last visit we had is that of a vice president on the occasion you mentioned, 2017, for the opening of this very airport that we're bringing you the coverage from this morning, the Argyle International Airport.
And so that's the new CEO of the Argyle International Airport there, who's giving the official tour, and they're just upstairs of the departure lounge of the airport, where you have businesses such as Gonzalez, the duty-free concession shops.
A range of businesses are there.
And a range of businesses located in that area. I think we've got, was it Land?
Yes.
Gonzalez Makers and various food eateries,
yes,
and so forth. You'll have there as well. Our Prime Minister, of course, he's a man known for story and adds a unique touch to the history every time of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. A story's been told, and I believe he's given it to them in true animated style and giving the significance of Cuba and the role that Cuba had to play in the construction of this Argyle International Airport here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we welcome Duncan Rohan, who's looking at us in the UK. I recognize Faye Cato, who's also looking as well. Gillian Williams Appiah is looking on from Canada.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're glad to know that you're listening, viewing, and commenting on our live feed this morning. And if you are on television, I know you're not able to comment, but we know that you're viewing by way of channel 114 on your cable boxes. So good day to you, good morning to you, and we hope that you are enjoying our coverage as well. Just on the outside, while the camera panned around a moment ago, we saw the Cuban flag on the air side fluttering in a gentle breeze that's blowing at the Argyle International Airport, and the flag is flying this morning because of a special occasion. And if it is that you're just joining us and you're wondering what exactly is happening, why are we looking at a live broadcast, this is the official visit, a state visit by His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, the President of the Republic of Cuba, who will be here for 3 days and engage in a number of activities, and will provide end-to-end coverage just for your convenience and for your information. I believe what they're looking at now is a painting that's mounted on the wall of the waiting area at the Argyle International Airport, a VIP lounge as a matter of fact. And that is one done by one of our local artists. I'm not sure if I should identify the name.
Yes, you can.
Yes, it's Calvert Jones, and quite notable. Whenever you see one of his paintings, it's quite easy to recognize. And a discussion happening there, of course, the Prime Minister will give the background as to the man behind the image and who the image represents. I believe that's our national hero being represented in that painting, and the delegation looking on as well and observing the beauty of what the Argyle International Airport has to offer, and the different placements, their paintings, their different pictures placed around the airport that indicate different significant moments and people for St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Indeed, Colvin, and I believe the other dignitaries and members of the delegation from the visiting delegation from Cuba, who we saw earlier, or probably on the outside, on the land side, just waiting for this official tour party to come out on the outside, so we'll get another opportunity to see them before they go to their hotels, and I believe there's probably some other meetings and other functions that are taking place throughout the course of today. So we, of course, will share with you the information that we have access to as we welcome again other people who are commenting where they're viewing us from. Once you start doing that,
yes,
you have to start saying hello to everyone. And Amy Ross, I believe Amy Ross is viewing from Miami, Florida, and there is
Amy
Josh
says she was able to
Kettner.
study in Cuba. She studied in Cuba in the 80s.
She can probably tell us what that was like, and we'll probably be able to speak to that. And,
Yes.
and you see how the security officials are they're very attentive in terms of the tasks for which they've been assigned. They take security at a totally different
and it's quite evident since the moment
yes,
the president
it is.
stepped off the
Yes.
plane. And you can clearly see the chief
Ensuring that there are no
security
obstacles.
taking charge. All right, so we'll bring you more visuals as they come our way from the Argyle International Airport. Of course, there are some points we'll have to switch cameras and we'll have to give you a different visual for various reasons. As we continue to bring you coverage here on the various platforms, we welcome you wherever you are. This is today the visit of the Cuban president, His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel, his wife, and delegation paying a 3-day visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and engaged in a number of events over the next few days as part of his first visit and the first visit of a Cuban president to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. A quick movement through the Argyle International Airport, I believe, into the interpretation center as expected. And earlier you saw some highlights as to what exactly is inside the interpretation center. And we see now the president having a quick view of some of the photographs and some of the plaques and other items posted on the walls there, capturing the history of the airport. And again, he will note a very lovely picture of his Fidel Castro, president of Cuba.
And you also see photos of the spanning. They have photos when they were when they were moving the artifacts.
Right.
Remember, you had to move the church as well, so there are some photos of that in there in the cemetery. You see some photos of the petroglyphs as well. They work, as I remember, the late Jeffrey Cato, because of course he was the local engineer on the project. I think it's Antonio Perez,
Yes,
one of the
familiar.
engineers from Cuba. His name, you hear his name, and that's synonymous with the Argyle International Airport. You see the workers, you see the day when the tractors and the heavy duty equipment came to St. Vincent, and they were traveling out from Kingstown to Argyle. So you see photos of that, photos of the workers. Remember, you had to what's the word? You had to demolish some buildings and some and there is a picture of done by Dings Johnson, local artist Dings Johnson, of what Argyle was before it was transformed to what it is now. And I could remember when we were doing an interview about that, one of the funny moments we had there was what Argyle was known for back in those days prior to the construction of the airport. So you see what it was then and how it has been transformed now, and the key players who were the members of the IADC at the time, and who had the weight of the country on their shoulders to ensure the construction of this facility. And that was very evident during all of that, the spanning of the road. So there is the transportation, the picture of the transportation of the tractors and the heavy equipment as they were heading back out to this side. You see pictures again of the members of the Coalition of the Willing, and you see other photos. That room, if you ever get an opportunity to go to the Argyle International Airport, I would encourage you, if you get an opportunity, to make it your business to see what the Interpretation Center is about. It's a rich history and the legacy that you would not want to miss if you're interested in this country's history altogether. And I'm grateful for having the opportunity to be able to see all of that and to experience that in a totally different light as we're bringing that to you. It's unfortunate that we're not able to bring you the conversations and for you to hear the tour, but interviews were done previously. And while I don't like to blow my own, as Johnny would say,
trumpet.
Right, right. So I had an opportunity to do an interview there, which I've asked, that we can share it so people can see that is another part of the airport that you would not normally get to see if you just go to the airport like that, but something that you should make sure that you're informed about as it relates to the construction of the airport, which was completed in 2017. And there are some artifacts on the ground that you see there, bits and pieces, and as you come out of the airport and you head towards the windward side of the country, you will see where the artifacts are now being housed. I mean, this is significant, and this is no easy feat in terms of the work and the planning that had to go in place for all of this to happen. And just sharing, and there is a Jeffrey Cato, deceased, that is there, and a very dear friend, someone who was an outstanding engineer to St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
And a son of the soil.
Son of the soil, in every aspect. A very great lion, if I must put a plug there. And you see Prime Minister Gonsalves there, a younger Prime Minister Gonsalves, I must add, looking at that. And we welcome you. Richard Byron Cox, who's viewing from Germany, we greet you and we welcome you to our broadcast. And I remember too that in here there are also pictures of when they had the 2 town hall meetings prior to the construction of the airport, where you had discussion with the homeowners who were living in Argyle, in terms of the planned development which was being proposed and how that would affect the construction of your homes and possible relocations. We covered all of that too. And there are pictures of there, and even photos of there in terms of the launch of the project, when the Prime Minister officially launched the project at the Methodist Church Hall in Kingston. You remember that?
Yes, I remember.
Yes. That's also another significant moment in this country as it relates to the construction of the airport. And
yes, and we see now the Prime Minister in conversation with His Excellency, explaining a lot of what he's seeing on the walls. Yes. And I do note, and I remember a lot of those events that you mentioned, some of them not in great detail, but I do remember because they were definitely newsmakers at the time, and they would have been carried quite extensively on the National Broadcasting Corporation and the other platforms.
API, you have to of course say API, yes, because at the time,
yes,
right.
We didn't have did we have VC3 as yet in the mix?
No, I don't believe that we had. I won't say that we didn't have VC3. VC3 was sort of in the making.
In the making, yes.
Yeah, at that time, in terms of who was working with us to do video, was Steve Wallace. And speaking all of this, I remember the Honorable Senator Julian Francis, because at the time he was integral to all the production elements and the work that we had to do at broadcasters in terms of getting all of this on the way. So I remember that, and speaking of which, I say good morning and I wish him a continued speedy recovery. We're definitely looking forward to having you back in terms of in Parliament and in the work in your ministry. So it looks as if
Yes.
that part of the tour is more or less wrapping up.
Yes.
And the
of
security
course,
officers ensuring that
very brisk in making
very
sure that
brisk.
you do not.
Well,
step in the
you've
way.
had several close encounters
have,
with security officers from previous visits.
Coast protection officers
Yes.
in particular.
I don't begrudge you with
The
those
most
experiences
memorable
at all.
one was several years ago with Her Excellency Tsai Ing-wen of the ROC Taiwan. But we now have the visuals on screen of the students waving the flags of both St. Vincent and the Grenadines and that of the Republic of Cuba. And some of them smiling and waving their hands.
These students, these pupils, well, at this stage in primary schools, they're referred to as pupils. They're happy to be here on a Saturday. You're getting dressed
In your uniform.
on a Saturday. This is a special moment
And you
for
get to greet the president of Cuba.
Yes, I touched the president's hand today.
I remember similar scenes when we had previous state visits. And you see the excitement. You see them, sometimes wanting to hug the security limitation sometimes. And I can tell that the security limitation is definitely a factor in this case. And they are moving very swiftly along with His Excellency and the media on the back. I see Antonio Richards in the back there, making sure that our feed comes in quite well from location.
Sharp and to
Multiple
the point,
locations,
and
multiple
ensuring that
cameras.
everyone, yes.
Of course, we are indeed limited by connectivity at some points, which we have no control over. So if you do see some texturizing, we do apologize for that, but that is beyond our control. We try to give you the best possible shots with the facilities we have. The Prime Minister now with His Excellency greeting our students from the Girl Guides. Yes, Girl Guides for a moment. The uniform. Yes, I just went blank.
Uniform organizations such as the local Girl Guides. Not too sure which of the packs are being used this morning. But this organization gives you an opportunity to be disciplined at a very early age, and the discipline you often get from being a part of these organizations, they stick with you for life, because it puts you in a position at a very early age to respect command, and probably command is a very strong word, but to respect authority and everything like that. So we see the translators are there. They're the translators. You always have to be in the mix of things, given the cultural exchange, the language difference.
Yes, and taking a moment to greet some of the uniformed members of various organizations individually. You saw His Excellency shaking hands, saluting a member of the cadet force, and moving quickly along to the other end of the lineup, and member of the Marine Unit of the cadet force, now engaging in conversation with the Prime Minister and His Excellency. And momentarily we'll see this portion of the visit wrapping up and moving on to other things planned for today. As we move on to about 18 minutes after 12, we say good afternoon to you. We glanced at the clock a moment ago and realized it was afternoon, so good afternoon to you wherever you are, and we hope that you were able to follow along with us and take in the coverage across the platforms.
The steel pan movement here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been buttressed, and this morning the Prime Minister is pleased to present to the President of the Republic of Cuba the steel pan side of the Southeast Steel Orchestra based in the community of Stubbs. Some music. We love you, St. Vincent. Let's take that in and see if we can get a bit of the interaction.
Of course.
We welcome you back once more to a coverage here of the official visit by the President of Cuba and his wife to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and of course their delegation. Are they waiting transportation now in the background, and the President and his wife, they're now making their way into their vehicle.
And the next movement will be to the next location.
To the next
to the next engagement. That's all we can say.
To the next location
now.
And the next engagement.
And in those engagements, of course, once photos are available from them during the course of the afternoon, whenever they're available, keep monitoring our platforms, the Agency for Public Information, NBC Radio, VC3, and we will share those across once they become available to us. End-to-end coverage, some of it live, others will be a bit delayed for various reasons, and we will hope that you are able to follow all our platforms as we bring you the coverage of this first visit of a Cuban president to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. On this occasion, His Excellency Miguel Diaz-Canel visiting today, and will be in state for the next 3 days, today, tomorrow, and Monday.
On Monday, we're expected to have a formal sitting of the House of Parliament here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and all things being well, we will be back on set to bring you coverage of that and the other engagements as well. So we ask you to stay tuned. All things being well, we should be back on set about 9 o'clock or so, or thereabout, or shortly before that, just about, probably about 8:45 or so, thereabout, God's willing, on Monday morning, to bring you coverage of the continued coverage of the official state visit of the President of the Republic of Cuba to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We've just witnessed the vehicle carrying the President of Cuba and his wife, and now the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I believe other members of the delegation and the security personnel, what have you. So remember, if you're driving along, of course there will be sirens, and you have to give way. Right. So especially coming out and at junctions, at the various junction points, police officers will be strategically positioned. So please just remember to give way to the traffic. There might be some diversions, as Colvin mentioned, so be aware of that. If you're driving along, we ask you always to take it easy on the roads, continue to be safe, and to observe all the protocols as it relates to the use of the road network here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Colvin, your final thoughts as we wrap up.
Well, what more to say than it's been quite a morning welcoming His Excellency the president of Cuba, and we look forward to the next couple of days of engagements. And there promises to be quite a lot for him to enjoy and take in while he's here among the engagements, many of which will be private engagements with the Honorable Prime Minister during the course of the next few days. But we look forward to it, and certainly it was a pleasure sharing this broadcast, one of two main ones we'll be doing. Tomorrow, of course, Monitor the Platforms will have an update for you as to the coverage of the one planned for tomorrow and the start time for that as well. So, yes, looking forward to the next couple of days and what that has to offer.
Well, this morning is a very beautiful day here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We started by showing you aerial shots of capital Kingstown, the central business district, which were taken shortly after 8 o'clock this morning, projecting into the headlands, showing you Keene Garden Point, Edinburgh, and of course the beautiful islands of the Grenadines. Well. So we'll ask our production team to bring some of those shots as we get ready to end. So then we had the arrival of the official private jet bearing the president of the Republic of Cuba and his wife. That took place shortly after 11 this morning. And then we had the national anthems of the Republic of Cuba, then St. Vincent and the Grenadines, then the inspection of the guard. After that, we had a walkthrough of the airport, which saw the president and close members of his delegation, along with Prime Minister Gonsalves and close members of his delegation as well, going to the VVIP lounge for a private meeting. They then left those meetings and then headed to the Interpretation Center for a brief tour and a walk through of the airport, which stops at the Interpretation Center. And of course, I mentioned that before.
Yes.
And the photo wall where you have the pictures of the presidents or former presidents who were part of the coalition of the willing, who assisted in terms of providing the funding for the construction of the Argyle International Airport, which was completed officially in 2017. Then we moved to the landslide, where we met with the pupils, I believe, from neighboring schools, then the Boy Scouts, the local cadet corps, and the St. Vincent and the Grenadine Girl Guide Association. And so this brings us to this particular point where we're here, and the official delegation and the convoy is on its way, I believe,
to the next point.
To the next point.
That's how we can say.
Yes, to the next point. And if you're on the road for one reason or the other, we just ask you to give way, and we ask you to be on the lookout. There will be sirens and there will be diversions, and we just ask you to be patient. We are hosts today of the President of Cuba, his wife, and their visiting delegation, and we are known to be excellent hosts, and I believe today and the next couple of days will be no exception. So from the production team, we have a large production team here, and I will try to do justice in terms of naming the members of the production team. We have Simeon Cumberbatch and Christopher Etienne on cameras at the Argyle International Airport. The production assistant and the editor at the Argyle International Airport, Antonio Richards. On photography, Clinton Bostwick and Simeon Oliver. Behind the studios here at VC3, located at the Victoria Park in capital Kingstown, the central business district, we have Jeremy. Jeremy, please forgive me. Jeremy, what's your surname again? Please do not sue me, Jeremy.
Jeremy, what's Duncan.
Jeremy Duncan.
Duncan, there you go, Duncan.
We also have the main person in terms of the production, the master mixer, the person who's putting all the shots together, video editor. We speak of no other than Rohan Dwight Bennett, better known as Zorro. At studios at Richmond Hill in Kingstown, I, of course, would like to recognize the work of the technical director, Renee King, and Premchad Budram, the announcer on duty. Colvin Harry, it's always a pleasure.
I forgot Simish Oliver.
No, I didn't. I said Simish Oliver
and
Simish Oliver and Clinton Bostwick. Thank you very kindly. And on behalf of Colvin Harry, I am Dion John. Thank you so much for joining us as we welcome you all to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, a natural place to be. And we certainly, over the next couple of days, will ensure that you have a wonderful visit with us. Do come back as we sign off from this part of our official broadcast. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Stay safe. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for viewing. Bye-bye.